Is shaping our nation. From major infrastructure development to pressing national issues, Focus on Government and Development will bring you up close with the decision makers. Exclusive interviews and in-depth discussions about what matters to you most. We'll go behind the headlines and bring you the real deal. Focus on Government and Development. Every other Monday, 7 p.m. on this radio station. Want to stay in the know about what's really happening with your government? Then tune in to Focus on Government and Development every other Monday at 7 p.m. Your source for updates on government initiatives and the current affairs shaping our nation. From major infrastructure development to pressing national issues, Focus on Government and Development will bring you up close with the decision makers. Exclusive interviews and in-depth discussions about what matters to you most. We'll go behind the headlines and bring you the real deal. Focus on Government and Development every other Monday, 7 p.m. on this radio station. Good evening and welcome to the program. You tuned in to Focus on Government and Development. We are broadcasting live from DBS Radio. We are located on Victoria Street in Rosa Dominica. We're also live on Kyra FM Radio. At 8 o'clock, you can catch us again on Q95 FM Radio. Those of you tuned in via social media, welcome. This is the program where we take you inside the work of the government of Dominica, led by the Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit, Prime Minister. We highlight the policies, projects, and the people shaping national progress, improving lives across Dominica. Tonight, our focus is on healthcare delivery, how we're strengthening the system. Of course, that's a sector that sits at the very heart of national development. We'll talk about hospital operations, service quality, staffing, equipment, patient outcomes. We'll discuss it all. We know you have a genuine vested interest in the functioning of the healthcare system here in Dominica. This evening, we are pleased to be joined by Honorable Kasani Lavelle. He is the Minister for Health, Wellness and Social Services. He is joined by Dr. Kenneth Daru, the Chief Executive Officer of the Dominica Hospitals Authority. Together, they will share insights into ongoing efforts to strengthen operations at our main hospital. Go over to Studio 2 at DBS Radio to say good evening to the Honorable Minister Lavelle and Dr. Daru. Good evening, gentlemen, and welcome to the program.
Good evening to you, Dion. Happy to be on tonight. Thank you for the invitation to be here.
Dr. Daru, how are you?
Of course, good evening, fine. I'm Dion. Of course, compliments of the season to all your listeners, yourself, and of course, all the listeners of DBS Radio. Happy to be back in the studios.
Yes, as I have you on the mic at DBS Radio. You've just taken on this new role at the hospital. How has it been going so far?
Challenging, but it's a challenge I think that I'm willing to rise to the occasion. I think that when the Honorable Minister and the Cabinet place the confidence in me to be the chairperson, the Chief Executive Officer of the Dominica Hospital Authority, albeit in an interim role so far, I think it spoke to the confidence in myself. Of course, the various levels the various posts I would have held over the years in the health system as a patient, intern, medical doctor, Minister of Health, and of course, most recently the Deputy Director of the Deputy Chair of the Board of Directors of the Dominica Hospitals Authority. So I'm humbled to have taken on this new role, and as I said, it has been challenging, not without its challenges, but challenges that I can see solutions, and working towards them.
Of course, the solutions aspect, that's important, and I'm sure we'll get to that eventually. But Honorable Minister, as I mentioned, we'll be looking at a wide range of issues, starting with hospital operations and service quality. Let's get right into the discussion and talk about how the Dominica China Friendship Hospital fits within our government's broader policy vision for healthcare delivery in Dominica.
Well, thank you again, Dion. Of course, the Dominica China Friendship Hospital is an acute hospital where we offer a secondary healthcare. Of course, we have a very intricate, broad network where we offer care, primary health care, and the hospital complements that type of care. And when I speak to primary health care, we reach people where they are, and by way of a network of health and wellness centers that we have across Dominica. So we have about 50 health and wellness centers, over 7 health regions or districts, with each of them having a type 3, which is the main, which basically functions like a polyclinic. Then we have other smaller health and wellness centers that are open for specialized clinics and visits at different times during the week or the month. However, the main health centers, the primary or the type 3 as we call it, are the primary centers where people generally access care. The way in which we approach health and wellness in Dominica is we would prefer people to be healthy first. We would prefer people to be well as opposed to accessing secondary healthcare. So that is what we try to advocate through our primary healthcare network. By way of coverage, based on the number of health and wellness centers we have, and when we consider the population, you juxtapose one versus the other, access is about 1,428 to every health and wellness center. So we try to reach people where they are. We also visit homes, provide advice to people, provide care at home as well. We have a network of pharmacies during the various throughout the various regions throughout Dominica. So, of course, access to our hospital, Dominica China Friendship Hospital, is more or less for acute cases, critical cases, accidents, and emergencies. Of course, we provide specialized care there, follow-up clinics, outpatient clinics, and a wealth of services, wide scope, wide array of services at our Dominica China Friendship Hospital.
Minister, in keeping with all what you've said, the objective really is to provide a quality patient care to make sure that our clients have the best experience at the Dominica China Friendship Hospital. Talk to us about the policies, the reforms you have in place to guide improvements in operations there, in governance.
Well, of course, one very important reform or transition that we would have seen would have started in 2021, and that's by way of the transition in terms of the governance structure and the operations of the hospital, and that is when through Parliament we would have then passed this new legislation, which is the Dominica Hospitals Authority Act of 2021. And this reform was very important in terms of the way that hospital administration was seen, to move to a system of centralized governance with a dedicated authority that is governed by a board. The intention was clear. The hospital, by way of the tremendous investment, the millions of dollars of investment that we had implemented to increase in terms of size and scope and services, we recognize that with such a growing institution that we need to change and alter our governance structure to be more focused, to be more responsive, and to offer more professional management. An institution capable of making quick and timely decisions to improve the operations and to make quick financial decisions also, because this matters. The board structure allows for faster procurement, quicker administration approvals, and closer oversight of hospitals' performance, while also maintaining accountability to the national health policy. And hence the reason why the minister continues to give oversight to the Dominica China Friendship Hospital, to ensure that there continues to be alignment with national policy. So we give guidance, we give good counsel, of course, but we do not get involved in the day-to-day operations and management of the hospital. So that was, of course, a critical step. Of course, we have our strategic plan, a 5-year strategic plan, which is important. And one of the key things for us is to gain accreditation for the hospital. And we have been doing that through Accreditation Canada. And that is very important, because what we hope to achieve is by way of accreditation. One would expect that in reaching that, in the process of doing so, that we improve. And these major improvements that we expect to make will be in alignment with international standards and protocols and best practices. And this will certainly help us in terms of achieving better quality and care outcomes at the hospital. We associate very closely with many international partners, say, for example, Pan American Health Organization and WHO and so on, to ensure that there is alignment. We try to improve all international ratings in terms of care and administration. For example, international health regulation is a standard that we closely are tethered to and ensure that we are always above average and we increase our score. And these are things that we are very much focused on. And we have partnerships with many other governments and hospital institutions with similar frameworks and operations that we can borrow from in terms of their standards and the modalities in which they operate.
I want to go back to the emphasis you placed on the transition to the Dominical Hospitals Authority. I remember when that happened, there was a bit of confusion in the public. In fact, some may have questioned whether the hospital was now privatized. And you touched on that, but I wish you could go a little bit more in depth as to what extent is the hospital autonomous in its operations, and how is that balanced with oversight, as you said, from your ministry?
Right. Well, certainly I can well understand the fears that the public could have had in 2021 when we decided to go that direction. But just to understand that the public should have no fear. We are a government with a philosophy that we are people-focused, we are people-centric, people-centered, and our interest as a government is to ensure that we improve the standards for the people, improve services for our people. And it is the very same thing in healthcare, because healthcare is important to all. I often make a joke, if I could go back in life, I would be a doctor or a lawyer, because no one wants to die, no one wants to go to prison. But certainly, this was a very calculated, well thought of process that took years in terms of implementation and consideration. It is a move that many Caribbean islands would have followed based on PAHO's recommendation. So, for example, the Bahamas would have moved to that authority over 20 years ago. Belize would have moved to it. And actually, Belize did it in a more bold way, as a matter of fact, where they did not merely just do a hospital authority, but they did a health authority. So primary health care is also part of their authority. And this approach allows for seamless integration. But we have certainly learned lessons from the different approaches, and we chose this model to have the hospital authority. It is one that we believe works. It makes no sense, in our view, that you have a major hospital, major infrastructure, state-of-the-art equipment, much more human resource capacity, much more areas of specializations, and to have the administration, when you have all the technical functions and capacities and operations being done at Goodwill, to then have the management on Kennedy Avenue, 4th floor. We believe an acute hospital with critical care services needs to be more agile in terms of its functionality, and that is what we are allowing in terms of of having a different governance structure with a board and managers, with a CEO and directors and people who can make decisions on the go to ensure that we can offer critical services and make cutting-edge decisions for people, clutch decisions at the right time, without the bureaucratic red tape that can sometimes follow with more complex governance structures. So we are simplifying things. So I can certainly say that, in hindsight, we could have done a better job in informing the public of what was happening. To give them that assurance that it is in their best interest. It was never an issue of privatizing the hospital. Based on the mandate that we have, and the direction and the policy guidance from the Prime Minister and the Cabinet, we believe that healthcare should be accessible, it should be equitable, and it should be low cost or no cost to as many people as possible. And with that being the case, we have been ahead. And I recall, it's my pleasure to sit next to a former minister, because it's during his tenure, Dr. Daru, where we would have taken that bold decision in the interest of people to ensure that the vulnerable groups, which would be under 18 and over 60, would have been exempt from fees at the hospital. And, these are things that have continued with the authority. And there's no plan to to change that policy in any way. And if anything, we maybe need to strengthen it by way of legislative action. And you can clearly see that we have been leaders in terms of being champions of the people, because that action which was taken under Dr. Darrow's stint is in alignment with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals in terms of equity and accessibility of healthcare. And these continue through the hospital authority. So the minister is very involved. I have an office at the hospital, but I am not a micromanager. I have full trust and confidence in my board and in my CEO and the administrative staff. So there's no need for me to sit at the hospital. I prefer to touch base with people and listen to the experiences so that we can ensure that we improve services and our offerings and the experiences of the people.
Yes, and Dr. Darrow, I wanted to bring you in here for a bit because you did serve as Minister for Health. You were chairman of the Dominica Hospitals Authority Board. Deputy chairman. Yes. And now you are the CEO at the hospital. Why does this model work? And how does it work?
Well, yes, thank you, Dion. Again, as I said in my introduction, that it really gives a different vantage point. Me sitting in the chair of the CEO, as I said, I've been through all strata, of the health system. I mentioned patient, intern, doctor, and it's funny that the minister mentioned, his oversight, and it's important, and he will tell you myself as a CEO, if you look at the organogram as it pertains to the structure of the DHA, I think the CEO is answerable to the board, chairman of the board, and of course in turn the minister. But he will tell you that from time to time, I would probably have a small conference call with himself and the chairman of the board, as he mentioned, because there are times that certain decisions need to be taken on the spot. And again, I'm bringing back to the topic of enhancing patient care, where decisions have to be made. And of course, as I said, given that the minister has the overall, the minister and ministry has the overall oversight, of the authority that is done. And of course, I welcome. I've assured them that the authority will always be aligned with government's policy. He mentioned the under 18 and over 60. And also in terms of requests from primary health care, because primary health care is free in Dominica. So laboratory tests and others will be done absolutely free when accessing the lab at the hospital. Because in fact the lab is still under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Health. So as he said, it's having an on-site team. An on-site team. He will tell you my few weeks that I've spent at the hospital. It also gives me the opportunity to move around a lot. I know there's a lot of office work to be done, but I think as a CEO, albeit interim for now, move around, and recognize, on the ground, firsthand, the issues. I think one of the first things that I did was to meet with the staff, all levels of staff, from the domestic all the way up. As I said, to give me an insight as to the issues. And of course, some of them I would have discussed with the minister, and we already putting things in place, the issue of job security, job tenure. Because one of the things that we recognize is that when the hospital was built, it was built, of course, with a lot more square footage, floor space, a lot more offices. And then I don't think the human resource part of it was never really addressed in any substantial way. So we find that we brought in a lot of staff to fill in the gaps, so to speak. So right now we now have to go through the process, and he will tell you that I've been at him and the PS, for a long while to try to get these positions created, give especially folks like the domestic staff, I refer to the cleaners, etc., the folks on the lower rungs of the of the workforce, to try to give them some sort of job security, because while the National Employment Program would have come in to fill in some of these gaps, but the National Employment Program was never really designed to go beyond 8 and 10 years. So we now need to create these positions But as you said, our job, my job as a CEO, and of course the board, is to implement the government's policy, and we work together.
Minister, throughout this discussion, just 20 minutes old, we've mentioned a couple of times patient care and patient outcomes. What policy measures are now in place or are being developed to improve the quality of care at the Dominica China Friendship Hospital and overall patient experience?
So certainly the patient outcomes, quality in care is important to us. We often call government workers public servants or public officers, and with that being the case, we want to ensure at an institution or facility like a hospital, when we see people come in the most vulnerable states, you have people who sometimes come in critical situations where they cannot speak, they cannot communicate their circumstance for whatever reason. They come in a critical state, unconscious in some cases. That is as vulnerable as a human being could get. And with that being the case, the outcome of this person's circumstance solely rests on our shoulders, in our hands, and we take this seriously because this is human life that we speak about. We speak of children, mothers, fathers, our cherished seniors who come to our doors, and it is our job to ensure that we do our best. We treat them with respect and absolute dignity. That is our philosophy. And for me as a policy maker, from a policy perspective, this is what we want all our clinicians to engender and to foster. That's the spirit of compassion which we want. To do that, there are many things that are required. So from a policy standpoint, we ensured, of course, that the facility is made available. Without the facility, we can't offer the care. So you would see for both primary health care and through the hospitals that we ensured we had the facility. Also, we have invested heavily in equipment in the hospital. Our imaging department, for example, is one area where we saw major investment. In the past, we had a department which Dr. Dar would know. We simply called it the X-ray department because all we had was an X-ray. Now we have so many more modalities of imaging that we now call it radiography and imaging, because we have CT scan, we have MRI, fluoroscopy, you name it. That is what we now have. So this is the type of investment that we have made to ensure that we have better outcomes for people, that doctors are guided by technology and equipment and so on, to ensure that they make better decisions for our people. We ensure that the hospital is staffed well, so that we have various doctors available to respond in time to the various challenges that our people present. We have various specialists to ensure that we have the specialized care in areas of need. And we, over the years, and even just this year, we've introduced new areas of specialization. Neurosurgery was something that we never had, but with the frequency of serious head injuries and spinal injuries and cerebrovascular accidents that our people experience, that we felt the need to invest and to ensure that we expand this area and to have this department for neurosurgery. And so all these are, from a policy standpoint, critical things and decisive decisions that we make to ensure that we provide an environment that can provide to our people good care that is accessible to all. we have invested heavily, and not only that, in terms of our standard operating procedures, we have seen major improvements in that. There are many things that we saw at the hospital in the past, based on the experiences of different doctors and clinicians. They would bring their best to the table, but we have done even better to try to standardize where possible, and to use guidelines, best practices and protocols from PAHO and different hospitals who offer that type of service, to ensure that we are streamlined in terms of our service offerings. In terms of record keeping, this is something that we've improved on. We do case studies in different cases. I recall we having a maternal death sometime last year, and we did a case study, and met with all the doctors and everyone who was present in that particular case management to understand and review the lessons learned and what could have been done differently and how we're going to optimize. This is standard practice for us at the hospital, and these are things that we have introduced to ensure that we have better outcomes. We also lean on the expert guidance of people who have had experiences in quality management internationally. I believe it was last year or a year before, we had a consultant from Barbados who worked with us for 9 months to increase and improve our protocols or standards at the hospital and generally in public health. So grateful for PAHO for supporting us in that area. We try to improve also from a policy standpoint, the financial management and health financing on the whole. Just 2 weeks ago, through PAHO again, we facilitated a health economist who was here to look at optimization and various revenue streams and improving oversight and efficiency and so on. And these things are important because healthcare is very expensive. So from a policy standpoint, absolutely, these are some of the things to ensure that we can look seriously into having better access to care and financing of healthcare by way of universal insurance to all. These are some of the things that from a policy standpoint that we mandate that be done, that be reviewed, and that be investigated. So we are really taking many steps to improve quality. We have a quality department, a quality manager who has staff where patient complaints are managed and monitored, and they're given feedback in a proper way where this can be addressed. And also too, from by way of policy, we have the Nursing Council that's responsible for the regulation of the practice of nursing and midwifery. And just this week I would have met with the president of the Nursing Council to discuss policy and monitoring and oversight and our general mandate. So say for example, I don't like to necessarily view these institutions as for punishment or reprimand only. They are positive. So say for example on a nurse's file, if they have done something outstanding, it's important that the matron or the director of nursing should in fact write and keep a letter on file at the hospital, but also too should share it with the Nursing Council. And it's the very same thing if there's a reprimand or so on, that should be shared with the Nursing Council. And they manage licensure. Nurses are required to be licensed and to renew the license every year. We ensure that nurses do at least minimum 30 hours of continued learning every year, and specialized nurses 60 hours. So these are some things that we mandate from a policy standpoint to ensure that our clinicians are up to par, because ultimately the patients are the ones, or clients are the ones who benefit.
All right. Dr. Daru, I want to stick with patient care and patient experience for a bit. And as CEO of the hospital, you spoke about being on the ground as opposed to, sitting at your desk doing administrative work. And I want to touch on the softer side of things, words like dignity and communication and compassion. How, as a CEO, do you plan to ensure that patient experience is improved? And I say improved because when we do hear feedback about the hospital, it usually has to do with how people feel when they go to the hospital, to the emergency department, etc. How do you intend to address these matters?
Okay, thank you. Honestly, even after listening to the minister, speech, I think he left very little for me to say, and I think he handled it quite brilliantly as it pertains to patient support. And just to elaborate on the point he made, I think we need to start here, that people seeking health, medical attention, are really in an altered state of mind, and I think the word you're looking for, anxiety. They're either sick or accompanying a loved one who's sick, and they're looking for answers. So I think if most of the healthcare providers, just have this at the back of their mind, that the person that sitting in the waiting room, the person that's sitting at the table, the person at the examination examination bed, the person on the bed, the hospital bed, that this is somebody's father, somebody's mother, somebody's brother, looking for answers, anxious. That I think will probably guide them, because I think I've often mentioned that we may have all the fancy diagnostic equipment that we boast of a while ago, and of course this is all good, the MRI, the 150 slice CT scan, etc., but it all boils that back down to patient and the human-to-human interaction, because it's mind-boggling. I think I mentioned that on a newscast that after we've celebrated all of these achievements, the infrastructure, the diagnostic equipment, and specialists. I mean, of all, all subspecialties right now. We're not even talking about foreigners, talking about a lot of them sons and daughters of the soil, that we send to train. They're back now, providing these services. That it's unfortunate sometimes that, that the complaints you hear. We can take back a few decades ago, where a few of our doctors were handling the entire hospital, probably at a time when maybe had even more population before a lot of our folks had migrated. And what you find happening, Dion, and I'm trying to be very simplistic, and I'm being that way to reaching out, especially to all healthcare providers, because I made that very simply during my tenure as Minister of Health, that you need to put yourself in the patient, in the person's shoes. I recall making an example of a mother with a 2-year-old, for example, hypothetical, at casualty, for example, at the A&E department, with fever. And the nurse would have checked the infant, but the mother is sitting there with her infant 2-3 hours. Nobody else saying a word to her. She see people passing, doctors passing up and down. But it could be that the nurses and them are dealing with a motor vehicle accident, life or death situation. So it's not going to take 2 seconds of the nurse time to just stop by the mother and say, "Mom, I know we've checked you, but we're dealing with this, so we'll be with you in a while." This is going to make the difference between whether this person rates the hospital 100% in terms of how they feel, or given a grade F. You with me? So I've told, I try to be very people-centric in my approach, both management and also myself, being a medical doctor also, which should come with intrinsic caring for people, and caring about how people feel, and even your facial expression, your body language, these are things that do not require money. And while, as I said, we will take care, I'm sure we're in discussions with the Ministry of Health, the policymakers, certain remuneration packages, and I think the minister, left out maybe a very important part. I'm not sure if I should leave it for him to say. The establishment of the creation of 26 new specialist posts. So a lot of our specialists, doctors, who have just been on and off, 1-year contract, etc., they're now going to be appointed, 26 new posts. And in addition to that, this is also going to open up the posts for a number of other medical officers, because you would have a specialist officer occupying this post. So these things we will deal with. The remuneration, we can go back and forth, banter back and forth. But these are little things that do not take anything away from you, but it's going to make a world of difference. And I'll tell you what Dion and myself experienced as a district medical officer. When people feel that you're going to do what you have to do to make them get well or their loved one get well, when things go wrong, when you do not have the expected outcome, because we are not God. I mean, health workers, not doctors. You might be the best. You could be Ben Carson. I mean, I'm sure you were Ben Carson, and you know, there are results. Well, unwanted outcomes. You know, we're not God, but you will find that these people defend you.
Yeah.
You with me? They will say, do not say anything about Dr. Laville. I'm giving you a title, my brother. You know, because Dr. Laville, from the day one, Dr. Laville made them feel that he was going to try his very best to make their loved one or themselves feel better. So they will defend you. You know, instead of going to social media, you understand me too. So as simplistic as it may sound, I think this is where I think our healthcare we need some improvement there, because as I said, the government has done and will continue to do a lot in providing, as I said, the infrastructure, the equipment, and all of this. But these are the things that do not cost much money, Dian. And I think that we need to continue. So in light of this, we really we continue to promote training among the nurses, the doctors, what they call CMEs, continuing medical education. We've also put in place established relationships with a number of he spoke about PAHO, CAFA, the others. Just recently, last week, we had the commissioning of what they call an overseas extension of Guangzhou. It is medical university in China, you know, where we now have telemedicine, we have laparoscopic training, and you know, where the professors, the university in China can give lessons right there in Dominica. So you also mentioned the governance structure, which is something that also going to, I think, in a way. So while we talk about the actual interface with the patient, the governance structure or the proposed governance structure is also going, I think, to improve the patient experience, because as we speak now, we have a chief executive officer and a hospital medical director. The new or proposed structure as proposed by the Minister of Finance, or rather as stated by the Minister of Finance at this year's budget address, talk about a chief executive officer and a director of clinical affairs, which will be on parallel with the chief operations officer, which will then allow that the director of clinical affairs to give focused attention to the clinical affairs, as the name says, where the CEO will then deal with more of the administrative, and then they will both then report to the chief executive officer. So as I said, the government will do what they have to do, but I think it boils down to, as I said, just simple human-to-human interaction. And I'm really saying it's appealing to to all our. We have a lot of wonderful healthcare workers. After the minister, they're the one holding this thing together. Very dedicated and stuff. But it takes only maybe one bad patient experience, and then all of the wonderful things that are happening at the hospital gets lost, which is unfortunate. The minister will say, that just recently we had a 24-weeker. I think 24-week. Right. Premature baby surviving. I think we spoke about it in the preparation. 24 weeks, that's like almost a month before what they call the surface, the lungs can function. You with me?
Yes.
So this is a success story, but what happened? It gets lost because somebody encounters an orderly who is maybe not so polite. Somebody encounters a nurse who is not so, you with me? Somebody encounters a doctor who's probably having a bad day and, probably just maybe just forgot momentarily, maybe. It could be a wonderful doctor, but just momentarily he forgot that, hey, this is a patient or this is a brother, sister at the bedside. So this is going to really be my focus. Because as I said, without the human resource and the being both in the quality and quantum of the human resource, that all of these wonderful things like the CT scan and they get lost in. They get lost there.
Yeah, I want to pick up two threads from what Dr. Dara was talking about, because Minister, even as we emphasize patient outcomes and patient experience as very important, we have to consider to our healthcare providers and their well-being, their needs, their state of mind. So you're saying that we are emphasizing also support, training, supervision, making sure that they are taken care of.
Absolutely. And it's important to note that I came on as Minister of Health about 3 years ago. And when we just go back to that time period, we're talking about the tail end of COVID. And what that meant, and we'll all recall that we called our healthcare workers then frontline workers.
That's right.
That has not changed. They continue to be frontline workers. So we are talking about a workforce that was overworked, a workforce that witnessed a lot of trauma themselves. They had this first-hand encounter with a lot of mortality. Over 80 would have perished in that time period for us. Many of them had to make serious sacrifices, personal sacrifices, not seeing their families for extended periods. They themselves confronting or coming close to people who are very ill, very infectious, but yet they have to administer care and then come home to their families, risking possible infection. They worked for extremely long hours. They were tired. And then when it was all over, we had new challenges. First of all, it's important to note that many of the people who perished from COVID would be those with comorbidities, those who had other ailments, the hypertension, diabetes, you name it. And that hasn't stopped because people continue to die from many of these ailments and so on. And when we have 3 and 4 people dying from some type of NCD, it tells you it is a real threat. So the workload is still there. That's what I'm saying. And they have not rested in any way. They continue to work. They continue to be frontline workers. Their health and wellness is very important. It's critical to us. It is central to us. So we approach this and we consider this very closely. One of the things that we have done was to ensure that they have job security and tenure. So like Dr. Daru would have said, we've created in the past few months, just before the budget was passed, 26 new specialist areas, specialist positions to ensure that these healthcare workers, these doctors, these specialists don't have to be bothered or be too preoccupied with the issue of tenure or renewal of a contract for 2 years and so on. That is one less worry for them. And we have done the very same thing for our nurses as well, by in the last year appointing almost 100. So that is something that we have done. We have ensured that they are trained, and we continue continuous medical education is offered to them. You would have heard about last week, and Dr. Daru just mentioned it, the association with the Guangzhou Training Center, to ensure that they are exposed to new cutting edge surgical procedures and medical knowledge. So that is something that can be done right here using our telemedicine center, and or for example in the cardiovascular department,
yes,
we have our cardiovascular imaging department, and where we link with a university in China for continuous training and oversight of patients. So that is something that we do to ensure that they are trained and they are more efficient and effective, and they can use cutting edge technology to function and to do their work. That is what we are doing to ensure that we are there for them. We continue to consult with our doctors. We want to ensure that their remuneration package is fair. So that is something that we have reviewed over the past weeks and months. We are at a point right now where we have prepared a draft in terms of offerings for a new package, new improved package. Cabinet would have discussed that. Since Dr. Daru came in as CEO, we have offered him the opportunity to review this offering, and he has been going to the different clinicians and specialists to review the package and see how we can improve to a point where they are all satisfied. So this is the type of engagement that we're having so that our Dominican doctors can have that dream right here in Dominica. So we have in fact been doing a lot. We respect our doctors and our clinicians highly. They are the core of our healthcare network and of this healthcare sector. Without them, there is no Ministry of Health, and so we have to give them that respect and honor that they deserve.
All right, certainly. I'm sure they're happy to hear it. Another area that you stressed was the provision, the availability of advanced equipment and facilities at the hospital. In fact, we do hear people saying, well, we have this brand new hospital, very spacious, good looking hospital, equipment. Are we seeing this translated into improved diagnosis, treatment, health outcomes? Speak to the success you've had with these new facilities that are in place.
Well, I recall that just a few months ago, we had Radiology Week, and we had the opportunity to just discuss this imaging department on a whole and the advancements that we have made. And it's important to move from one imaging modality to 6 imaging modalities. That is a major improvement. It is now, it's comparable to doctors in the past, like I've said, working in the dark. Imagine, being completely blind. You can't see, you can't hear. You really don't have senses, any type of sense, and you're required to make a major decision. To a large extent, that is how we have worked in the past, and we have moved on from that right now. But it's important to note, though, that while technology is important, the human touch is even more valuable, because you can heal someone by making them feel better. It's one thing to go into this fancy MRI machine and soon our renewed and revamped hyperbaric chamber and all of that. Yes, or HIFU machine.
The famous HIFU machine.
So we have so much equipment. Fine. Or 1 out of our 10 dialysis machines. Fine. We have a lot. But the human touch is critical, because if you can't communicate with a patient clearly, who could simply tell you how they feel, and you feel instead the best way, as soon as you see that patient, send them to imaging right away, without even merely communicating, just because you have the equipment, then we already lost it. Yeah, we've lost it.
You wanted to weigh in?
So we've lost it.
Minister, if I can, I think just to add to what he's saying, because you could have all of this fancy equipment, and then, for example, there's a delay, for example, in communicating the results, of some imaging study that you did with the patient, so you could have done an MRI, for example. I mean, I've seen a few cases where, but the consultant doctor probably would have, delayed in communicating. So you have the patient lying on the bed or wherever the case may be, and have been no word from the consultant as to what his condition, family getting anxious, you with me? So yes, the equipment is there, and yes, it's done, and yes, we have the diagnostic capabilities, but the communication, we've been back to what he was saying and what I was trying to say earlier. That is, I think, key going forward. And if there's one maybe a message I would maybe like to take, I'm sure the minister, because I think you realize we're on par with this, is that we think that if everyone does what they're supposed to, that they're supposed to, nobody's asking you to for example, invite people home, to the Sunday lunch, anything like that. Just do what you're supposed to. You communicate, relevant communication. Sorry, I'm within the different departments. You with me? That kind of stuff. And one of the things that I've tried to do as the interim CEO is also to let each and everybody, even the lower rung of the workers, that everything, what each and every one of them do is equally important.
Yes. From
the cleaners to the big time, surgeons, and because without the orderlies coming to transport the patient timely, you'll have delays, and sometimes minutes, could mean, timely interventions, etc. So the human touch, I think, is what we really need to keep on keep on.
So Dion, I'm happy he understands that clearly,
Yes.
because you would see that we have done our part from a policy standpoint to invest heavily in a new facility, to invest heavily in the new equipment, in many services, modalities, different scope and range of services. We have made these improvements to provide that governance structure, the staffing, requisite staffing. So now
Training.
it is his job, the CEO and the rest of the elite team at the hospital, to now connect the dots on a daily basis, on a timely basis, to ensure that we have the outcomes that we desire.
Minister, even I think the whole accreditation process that you mentioned earlier by itself, is something that will ensure that, checks and balances are done, because the accreditation process is a really grueling one. I'm sure the minister is very familiar with this, where, a number of boxes have to be checked, and among these would be patient quality control, patient support, etc. We mentioned the patient support in the new budget support unit, but the minister quite eloquently expounded that we do have a quality control department at the hospital. So what we're thinking is, in keeping with, of course, implementing the government's policy that this patient support unit, that what it seeks to achieve, whether it could be implemented, whether it's been beefing up the quality control unit with the requisite staff, to do the work of the patient support unit. So as I was saying, even the very accreditation process itself, because the accreditation process speaks to everything. I mean, the lab processes, the imaging processes, as I said, a space where patients can vent, and their concerns documented, and all of this. So if we need to get any pedagogic services, meaning that, whether we're an institution where we allow for learning for medical students and medical graduates, etc. So if we can check, maybe not all, most of the boxes within this accreditation process, I think the hospital will be well on its way. And of course, as I said, more importantly, that our healthcare providers, especially those who interface with the public, understand that the person that you transporting, the person that you're talking to, the person that you're taking the temperature, the blood pressure, this is somebody whose anxiety levels will be, all the way high. And I think if I think to have that at the back of your mind, Ian,
Yeah.
I think that we should, I think we will get there. Yeah.
There's one other matter that I wanted you to address, because sometimes I feel my job is to bring the concerns of the public for responses, for solutions. So access to medicines has been an issue of concern for members of the public, and that is specifically at the Dominica China Friendship Hospital. How have we addressed the issue of procurement of medicines?
Right. We have done quite a bit in that area of procurement. So first of all, it's important for us to understand the structure. So central medical stores, the management and daily oversight of that has been retained by the Ministry of Health, Wellness and Social Services. All right. So we do most of our procurement through OECS pooled procurement, right? And that is something that, while we have been party to that since the 80s, recently we have been using that service much more. And the reason why we have done that is to ensure that by way of pooling our procurement as a region, economies of scale, the benefits from that we believe, if we can have all the OECS islands procuring together, we benefit from a better price. Not only that, we believe that doing our procurement through OECS PPS, having various pharmacists and access to the laboratory at CAFA, or pharmacovigilance and the checks and the requirements to ensure that there's no biomimicry of the drugs and so on, and that they are market ready and safe for use by our people. All of that is done through OECS pool procurement. So that is something that we have instituted and implemented. Not only that, we have improved our forecasting. And one of the challenges that we had in terms of the transition from the way the hospital was managed and administered, we would have somewhat dropped the ball in terms of forecasting, because for the most part, the way it worked as one system, that it would be seen as staff from Ministry of Health, but with the division in terms of having different responsibilities, the requirements for forecasting, in terms of ordering and requisitioning drugs was now done by the Dominica China Friendship Hospital. But what we realized was that the skill set of forecasting was with the Ministry of Health, Wellness and Social Services. So that was a gap that we soon saw. So we had to ensure that there was better balance, that we could respond to that and fill that void, and better share the resources within the hospital and the ministry in that area. So we've been able to bridge that. We know clearly, based on our rating annually that is done through OECS PPS, we have a score in terms of our performance with procurement, and we have seen radical improvements in all the 7 key performance indicators in terms of our responses and the availability of drugs. One thing that's important, because I certainly am someone I'm tethered to honesty very closely, and I know some people who are listening and wondering why they can't get certain drugs at the pharmacy sometimes, or in some cases every time. The fact is, with central medical stores, we order based on a drug formulary. So this is the drug list that we use of largely generic medication, largely. And it's not a list that we created at the Ministry of Health. We're using an OECS drug formulary that was put together by pharmacists, by doctors, by care providers. And this is regionally accepted. And so in terms of our rating, we are rated and scored based on the medication, the drugs from the formulary. So we should not expect that if someone has cancer, for example, and the doctor decides to prescribe a new medication that's probably even in development or trial stages, that we should be expected to have that at central medical stores. This is a case where it would have to be ordered. We can't expect that we would have this on the shelves. We have a responsibility at central medical stores to manage the finances of the government. And we have to ensure that we can forecast well, so that we don't order too much, that we order in a manner that is consistent with the uptake of the drugs. So because there's a shelf life, and there are different modalities for storage, and these are things that we are cognizant of. So one of the things that we do is to optimize procurement by knowing what we need at the right time, when we need it, and to order it in the right quantities. There's sometimes we may not have a particular drug, but it's not that we did not order it. It could be that for whatever period, you may find that the uptake was more for a particular drug. So say if we have more surgeries or elective surgeries, that the uptake of pethidine could be more than what it would have been for another period. And these are controlled substances that we don't have in very large quantities. So what we do then is collaborate very closely with other pharmacies in the region, say St. Lucia or other OECS islands, where quickly we have a facility through courier services, and even for the past years from COVID, through RSS, who facilitated us when needed. So all these are measures that we've taken to improve procurement and the service that we offer to our clients through our various pharmacies. And not only that, we are digitalized now by using ELMIS, Electronic Logistic Information Management System, that we have been using. So our orders are done digitally, and we are all networked and linked at our various pharmacies. And we're taking it a step up with HMIS, Health Management Information System. So actually, today we were supposed to have had a critical meeting where we just finalize that component of HMIS. Do we keep ELMIS, which is what we had in terms of our stock management, or do we transition to HMIS, or do we integrate the two? This is an important meeting that we expected to have today. So, we have been doing a lot by way of improvement, and it is certainly noticed in terms of the sentiment of people and even the sentiment of our pharmacists, because from touching base with our pharmacists, they were not in a good place at some points, because it's never a nice thing to have an elderly 80 years old walking up a hill to access a health and wellness center for your drugs, your medication, and for the pharmacist to say, no ma'am, we don't have it, and knowing that it's free for them, and then going to the private institutions and facilities they pay. So it is something that bothers us deeply when we don't have it. So we continue to improve and make critical steps to improve our service.
That's wonderful. All of this is very, very interesting. I think people think health might be, not the most exciting topic. But I think this has been all very instructional, very interesting, very revealing. So thank you for that. I'm saying all of this because, believe it or not, we've exhausted our time. There's a lot to talk about, I know, but this platform is always available, and others. We do the Government in 5 program. We could take advantage of these platforms, but I wanted to end by having both of you, in a way, summarize your views on the availability of proper patient care at the Dominica China Friendship Hospital, and from a government perspective, from a CEO perspective, how do we see that improving even more?
Well, thank you, and I will, of course, leave the minister to close up shop, of course. Well, I think we've mentioned all of the various programs and services that we have on offer at the Dominica China Friendship Hospital. A much improved facility, much improved both quantum and quality, as I said, of diagnostic services, the lab, radiology department, all of this. But I also will go back, of course, to the human part. This is ongoing. We will make all efforts, as I said, to have various trainings. But I think I needed to, just in closing, just to support what the minister said, really, HMIS, which is, I think, another success story, a potential success story, I think, because in addition to the management of the pharmaceuticals, the HMIS is going to improve, transparency, accountability, and it's not going to be limited just to the hospital. It's also going to be across the board. So it means that all the various health centers, in terms of stocks of medication and other consumables, will be live, and we're in an advanced stage of this. I think we were supposed to go live, I think, sometime this month, but I think we've identified a few gaps that are being taken care of. And another thing, I think the minister, I think I'm hinted at earlier, really accreditation process. We mentioned our green energy minister, and recently we commissioned a massive solar system at the Dominica China Friendship Hospital, 89 kilowatt that is going to be fed back into the grid, and we're now talking about a phase 2 of where we're going to now speak to storage, so that critical parts of the hospital can still function if the grid and, of course, our backup generator, I say, God forbid, fails. So that's another massive step, that will probably go a long way into ticking many boxes in our accreditation process. We also commissioned recently the operating theater at the A&E department, and I think we mentioned that this is major, huge. Yes. This is huge. We're talking about time, about where we are. In critical surgeries, where time is of the essence, where minutes can make a difference. So. I think in a nutshell, before I hand over to the minister, I think we really have a lot to celebrate, a lot, to be lauded, As I said, I think if we, the providers, at the point of sale or point of delivery, what you want to refer to it, of healthcare, if we can just make a little more effort, to be that much more conscious, I think we could have maybe one of the best healthcare system in the world already. Our primary healthcare system, which at one point was lauded as one of the best worldwide, maybe second, maybe only to Cuba, in terms of our prevention and our wholeness at the community level. So I think this is a vision that that I share with, together with the government and the honorable minister, that we get to this point where the point of service, the point of care, can be on par, with the services that are being offered. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm impressed by my CEO.
He almost left you speechless, or what?
Yes, I'm telling you. But I think my final message to the public is one of reassurance and partnership. I want to let the public know and understand that we get it. We understand their fears, their concerns, their challenges, their anxiety, and in some cases, their vulnerability. We understand. From a policy standpoint, we get it. And also, I wish to reassure them that most of our healthcare providers, they get it. These are not just doctors who are good at chemistry and math and biology, and it's just because of that they felt I'm bright, I want to be a doctor. Most of them, I've encountered them. These are people who genuinely care and have compassion for people. Most of them do. We, from a policy standpoint, get it to the point where we invest more than the 6% of GDP that is required internationally based on PAHO's advice to us. We invest more than that in healthcare because that's what it means to us. If we say that we are people-centered government, we have to prove that we are people-centered government. So we prioritize healthcare. And I am grateful to the Prime Minister as head of policy to continue to prioritize healthcare in every situation, every opportunity that he has. I'm grateful for that. We get it. We listen to the feedback of our people. We listen to their cries, to their fears, and we have been instituting the radical changes to ensure that we address their concerns. We have been making quite a bit of headway. You would realize, I don't get too excited about it, but I note it, that there are less gripes or concerns or in terms of the public discourse and negative sentiment. We note that. But these improvements are really lessons for us that we need to continue to improve the quality of care and the service that our people receive. We'll continue to staff our hospital, to make our clinicians and all the staff at the hospital feel like that there is an excellent working environment where they can thrive and where they can ply their trade and to treat people and heal people. We will continue to invest in operating this hospital well so that we take care of the expensive equipment that we have invested in. It's expensive, but it is something that we are fully committed to. We'll continue with our strong partnerships and alliances with international partners that are critical to the outcomes that we have. And I speak to our Cuban collaborators and the partnerships with the People's Republic of China to have various specialists providing care to our people. Even this laparoscopic training that Dr. Daru spoke of, the instrumentation and is done by them. The training was done by them. Over 60 were trained by them. And we have to be grateful for that. And we'll continue to foster these strong alliances that are helpful to our people. I'm asking that people continue to engage with us, because while we do our best with policy, while we realize that people receive care, if there's no participation between people and policy, then we'll have challenges. We'll do our best to improve our modalities for communication and reaching out to people, letting them know and understand what we are doing and what is required of them as well. We want people to follow medical advice, adopt healthy lifestyle, because it is very important that they listen to the medical education that is provided from our various units. We would prefer that people are healthy and well as opposed to accessing care at an acute hospital. We would much prefer that. I want to reassure people, very importantly too, that we are not a referral hospital. And I mean that we continue to invest in the specialists and the human resources that we need to ensure that we provide the best care to our people. ICU, we have an 8-bed facility, something we've never had. Life support equipment where we deal with the most acute cases. We've been doing well. We've been lauded by institutions in the French islands for the type of first-hand care that we've provided to stabilize some critical patients. This is what we offer. I want people to feel safe, to believe in our hospital, that when they come to our doors and these hallowed walls, that the first thing that they think of should not be a transfer, but to have the confidence in our people that we can do it. They've been trained by the same advanced universities around the world. We recently had a trauma symposium where we had, medical doctors from Dominica. Dr. Joseph?
Yeah, DeAndre Joseph.
DeAndre Joseph.
Yeah.
A Dominican doctor doing great things in New York, coming to have a symposium on trauma. This is what we continue to do to ensure that we are at that level. We don't claim to be perfect. We'll continue to improve. We'll continue to get and attain accreditation. But we want people to understand that we get it.
Very emotional.
You feel emotional, Dr. Daru? Thank you so much, Minister, for these closing remarks. We do ask for the support of the Dominican people as the government of Dominica, the Dominican Hospitals Authority, continue to put the systems in place, make the necessary improvements to provide you with quality health care. Gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for joining us on Focus on Government and Development. Good evening to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, dear.
All right. You're invited to tune in every other Monday right here on DBS Radio, Cairo FM, and then on Q95 FM Radio for Focus on Government and Development. My name is Dion Dira Smith, bidding you a good evening.
To know about what's really happening with your government? Then tune in to Focus on Government and Development every other Monday at 7 p.m. Your source for updates on government initiatives and the current affairs shaping our nation, from major infrastructure development